How's it going? A lot of you folks wouldn't know who I am. I was walking downtown the other day wearing this really great shirt, Allison Murden's shirt, Pothead, it's for you. I was asked a question by somebody about what I know about Phoenixtears, and I responded that that's the holy oil, the treatment, the cure, an effective treatment for many things. And I don't really want to talk about Phoenixtears. I want to talk about the Daren McCormick story, a little bit of background about what's happened behind the scenes with Phoenixtears. For a lot of the stuff, if you need to know, there's topics and it's all over the place. It seems to jump around a little bit. 10-year history of being right when the government's been wrong. It's been pretty arduous. Well, I'm going to start the story with who I am and how I got here. Well, as you may know, Daren McCormick was arrested back in late August 2017 for growing pot. And Daren never being one to tell on people or keep good records and paperwork of what's going on, it wasn't hard for him to keep hidden from the fact that the plants that were seized this last time were seized actually belonging to me. My name is Kevin Moore, and I'm a friend of Phoenixtears. I'm also family to Daren. I've been kind of a protector and guardian of Phoenixtears in the background for years. I've been involved with Rick and the crew since late 90s. Just after Daren got involved. I've stayed out west in Calgary for a lot of years. Daren got into a little bit of difficulty in the Maritimes again, believe it or not. Some guy gave him a bunch of seeds when he got out of jail and he started growing again and doing what he's doing. Well, this story starts there. He was growing my plants. I'm one of Canada's first authorized patients. I was pre-exempted before MMAR a number of times. And I was having all sorts of trouble accessing my medicine. Daren had offered to help me out and grow for me, so I put my license, or my exemption, it's not a license, it's an exemption. I put it at his house and in his care, and he began growing plants for me. Along the way, he was also growing some plants for a man from Ontario, and that man had stage 4 terminal lung cancer. And when the RCMP and the Amherst police came again to the house, to his farm in Northport, seizing all his plants, as a result, we believe that the man succumbed to his cancer. How is it possible, even for anyone to be stage 4 cancer, sent home from the hospital to die, qualify for cannabis license from the government, process it, go through a 10-month waiting period? It's almost 18 months before they get their first round of medicine. That's too long. People were dead at that point in time. Remember, we're talking about stage 4 terminal people in hospice. Anyhow, I don't have stage 4 cancer. I don't have cancer at all. I've got brain injury, concussion trauma syndrome, COPD, and a bunch of other ailments that cannabis helps. I've eaten oil for a long, long time, and I came out to Nova Scotia to help Daren out. I came out here to walk into a courtroom in April 2018 to say that a man was wrongfully accused of growing plants, and I'm still here. Some of you may know that Daren had been framed by the police. By framed, I mean they had a shotgun carried out from one residence and carried into his home and set on the floor. The investigation and the notes and everything reveal that the investigation found a number of firearms in the house, significant quantity enough that it would scare the general public. Imagine this, a healer being caught with a bunch of illegal plants, so the government says, seizes them, and fabricates 23 or more gun charges to alienate the person from the community. Nobody can stand with a guy like that. Well, a guy like that, that's Daren. That's who's been standing for you and everybody else all along. He's one of the original members. He's still the only standing member left. And I came out to help him. I went into court. I was denied access to the court initially. Daren and I were both denied access. We argued for 35 minutes in the lobby with the police at the court in April. And after a lengthy discussion and some heated debate and some negotiations, the RCMP decided to return 100 and some grams, 150 grams of cannabis, about 150 grams of oil back to me, and 10 grams of mushrooms. And the mushrooms are a special part of this story, but just not right now. We walked into court. We were recognized as being reverends. We surrendered our titles before the judge. She didn't surrender hers. And we went forward. Now Daren has a little bit of a trick. He's a free man on the land. That means that he won't submit to overreach and authority. I'm a bit of a patriot-minded person, a free man on the land myself, originally from Alberta. I'm here helping my friend Daren. Some of you might know some of the other free men that were out here in the Maritimes, but it's all tied together. Everything is tied together more than anybody realizes.
What is a free man on the land?
Free Men on the Land is an organization of people that have loosely been associated by the government as being domestic terrorists, because we have the ability to interpret maritime law. And by maritime law, it's all trust. Everything is man's law. It's trumping natural law. Everybody keeps talking about we have the charter rights. And I say, and Daren's like me says, we don't want our rights. We stand upon our freedoms. We understand this and we stand under this. Well, I've been at the court. A whole lot of things have happened. We've exposed the corruption. We've discovered that things are still continuing as they were before. The same police officers that were involved in going after Rick are still going after Daren. I came to court the first day and told them I was going to expose a kingpin about this whole thing. They thought they were going to get the kingpin of Phoenixtears. Well, there is no kingpin of Phoenixtears. Phoenixtears is an idea. It's an evolution. That's all it is. We're the same people that reject the alcohol, the cancer-causing drugs, the foods. We just won't submit. We shouldn't have to. We stand on freedom and for freedom. We have the right to choose, and we have the freedom of self-governance. It doesn't matter if it's a legal substance or an illegal substance. None of it matters. We can put any substance in our body that we so choose. We have autonomy to do so. And that's the freedom that everybody trades when they say that they have the right to do something. Rights are fluid, and rights have been given. Well, Daren has never agreed to participate at all. An act is something in law that has the appearance of law and force of law upon consent. Daren has never consented. It's fraud. Maritime law is fraud. Admiralty law. It's the administration of trusts and equity.
And who do statutes apply to?
The statutes are sort of a handbook for the police and all Crown agents. By Crown agents, that's police, government officials, mayors, not politicians. They're responsible to only the people that are paying their check.
The Law Society.
And the Law Society, that's right. Some of the things people don't realize is we were declared lost at sea. They think of Canada as a country. It's not a country. It's a corporation. Back in the day, we had a weaponized colonial system, and that was the Hudson's Bay Company. And that's when they came in and they took the rights from so many people and tricked everybody. Well, that was against the Indigenous. And years later, it turns out that the Indian Act was never good for them. Well, all Canadians now get to enjoy the Cannabis Act. It's even more restrictive against people. You have to have so many freedoms waived in order to participate in a program. We've got a licensed producer system that is being run by police. We've got police in a small town that are still trying to put out Phoenixtears and end the legacy, the legend, whatever it is. They're trying to stop it. One of the police officers that was involved before in taking down some of the Phoenixtears members and whatnot, a man that Daren had strong feelings about, has now become the deputy chief. And that's very concerning, because at this moment in time, while helping Daren out, I've collected some interesting charges. I'm currently fighting the same people that framed Daren. And I guess they've invited me to stay. So when you guys are watching this, I just want to let you know, you invited me to live here. You gave me all this paperwork. You must enjoy my company. So I'm taking you up on the offer to move here. There's so many things that we can talk about. It's going to have to broken up into sections.
Right. So we just covered a bit of the first raid and that bringing you down. And now we can move on to you guys getting the farm and stuff, I think.
Okay, some of you folks might know that Daren had a farm in Lochbroom. Well, there's been some rumors going around that we had a secret investor and things like this, and a front person for the property. It was nothing like that. Everybody that knows Daren knows he has a great heart. Well, a few years ago, Daren's father passed away, and he had received an inheritance. And had everybody found out that he had received some money, it would have been gone away in seconds. So we gave it to a friend to hang on to him. And he had mentioned this when he was in Ontario with me in 2016. And I'm only mentioning this at this point in time is so we can establish that this isn't a last-minute idea or something crazy or some legal scheme or defense. It's just simply fact. Daren had given his inheritance to someone to hold in trust. A property was found late last summer. We moved out to the farm in July. It was 1399 Lochbroom Loop. And it's okay to say the address now, because while we were there, we had been joking around that it was going to become Canada's next great thing. We had just initiated a cancer study announcing it publicly that Daren was going to give away through Phoenixtears Ground Zero World Foundation over 100 free treatments of Rick Simpson style oil, Phoenixtears hash oil, made properly, made naphtha with the strongest product possible, with the utmost attention given. Every single batch is craft made. It's simple. Anybody can do it. Everybody should be doing it. But we made a publication study. We made a research study. Everything was set up. We did a big international media release for this. It was called the Allison Murden Garden of Peace. And then there was a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, an ex-jail guard named Bob Dillman, that decided to join the program. Well, I've always been leery of law enforcement. Never been my fans, but I've always been one of Allison's biggest supporters and fans, and she's been a very, very strong ally to me for years. And when Daren found out that she needed some oil, and she needed some medicine, and that she hasn't been able to get her plants, he jumped at the chance to help her out. So Daren cashed in his inheritance money, leased a farm for 2 years with an option to buy, contacted Allison, got everything set up, had over 1,000 plants outside in the garden. I brought 235 plants with me that were mine, that were genetics, old lineage genetics, special plants, things we can't get anymore. I don't know how to replace them. White Widow 96, Blueberry 93, the blueberry that was indica dominant, Northern Lights number 5, all my Afghani strains, our land races, between what the police had taken years ago in raids and what they've taken now, we've lost everything. We're starting over again and again. It doesn't matter. It's what we do. Our business model's horrible. Daren and I have both known to trade full treatments for as little as a jar of jam. Daren likes freezer jam, so do I. I like pickles. This was all brought about losing the farm in Lochbroom because of a police officer from Amherst named Derek Hibbert. He was a police officer working on the Combined Forces Task Force, the Street Crime Unit, so he's working for the RCMP, and he was interfering with us continuously at court. He was instructed to interfere with us, and that sounds like a pretty strong statement, but later on in the story, we can show you proof, evidence, that Derek was asked by the Crown Attorney to withhold disclosure until after Daren's trial, and that a senior officer was also going to withhold information that would tend to help Daren, exculpatory type of information, such as the officer saying something like, I found the shotgun in a different residence and carried it into the other address, into Daren's home, and placed it on the floor. His notes reflect that. Those were the notes that they were asked to be withheld until after Daren's trial. Well, that same cop, Derek, voided me, voided my freedoms under the charter, taken my medication, arrested me falsely for possession for the purpose, stolen my medicine from me. It's okay. I'm not worried about it. It's okay. Nah, it's okay. I don't go far. I'll just step on it. No, that's okay. So, back to how I got here. I came down to Nova Scotia to help Daren. We're at the Amherst Courthouse, 16 Church Street. We're doing fairly well with Daren on his pre-trial. Daren's never been one to consent. So he's one of the few people that has an opportunity to have a quash action that's actually going to win, because he stated his objection before taking responsibility by standing there by name. Once you do something like that, you can't object to jurisdiction. And this is all complicated, tricky legal traps and tricks, but it's not as it seems. It's designed to trap you every time and deny you of your rights. That's right. I let your rights be denied. You stand on your freedoms, as Daren and I do. You have the freedom to eat the oil. You have the freedom to put anything in your body that you choose. You have those unalienable freedoms. We don't need permission to eat when we're hungry. We don't need permission to garden. We don't need cannabis to be in the Controlled Substances Act or in being included with handcuffs. Well, Daren's in court back in Amherst in April, and on that date at the pretrial, I was put on the stand and I identified myself, and Daren asked me a simple question. Do you know anything about the plants at my house? And my reply was yes. Well, here's what I know about those plants. The majority of those plants on the property were mine. They were protected by a license called a Section 53 under the Narcotic Control Act. This is the exemption that was issued before we had government marijuana in Canada. I received my first exemption in the late 90s, and I mentioned Alison Murden. Great shirt, by the way, Alison and Gary. It's just, we've been duped by everybody. The police are still messing with things. They're still trying to eradicate Daren. They're still sore because he freed Rick Simpson. There's dozens of reasons why this could be. Maybe it could be because of the fact that Doug Shafford, the Crown Attorney that was prosecuting Rick, and we've all heard about a really neat series of videos out there. Well, another part of this story I'm going to explain, because I put it on record for the court already, is that Doug enjoys smoking hash. And while he was prosecuting Rick Simpson and trying to destroy Phoenixtears, he was occasionally known to smoke a little bit of hash with someone else the community knows. And that person, they don't have to be named unless it comes out in court. This isn't the story about bashing anybody. This is the story of trying to say the Amherst court system is corrupt. The same corrupt police that tried to eradicate Rick Simpson and Daren and all the other members of the group, John, Alan, everybody, they've all been beaten down, died off. They've almost gotten control of Phoenixtears. And I'm saying that because we have corporate LP weed in Canada, and they offer cannabis oil, and doctors are willingly prescribing oil to their patients. Unfortunately, the oil they're prescribing is basically a tincture. It's horrible. It's thin, MCT laden, olive oil based. It's not true full spectrum. It's very, very weak. To use their oil to get even close to what we get out of a single dose or treatment of Phoenixtears would cost upwards of $35,000 through the LPs. That's a big margin on something that grows free in the ditch. How much is some seed and some sunshine? A little bit of naphtha, some buckets. Refine it outside. Make your medicine.
So you guys started growing another garden at this farm.
So we started growing at this farm for Allison. And on August 28th,
How big was the garden?
the garden was 855 plants or so for Allison, plus a few other patients had some plants there. And I'd say outdoors we had over 1,100, maybe close to 1,200 outdoor plants. Indoors there was some genetics, mother plants. For example, I lost about 35 mothers inside the house to the police raid. The raid happened in September, I think September 17th, 2018. It was triggered because of the actions of Daren McCormick. And again, I keep coming back to free man on the land. Well, Officer Daren McCormick informed the RCMP that he came into contact with myself. He falsely identified me as being a lawyer from Ontario. He identified me as having firearms prohibitions and proclivity for not liking the police. I have no problem with the police, as long as they stay within the confines of their duties and the scope of their authority. Other than that, we leave each other alone. Well, Derek informed the Pictou Region RCMP that Daren and I were growing a garden. Well, that's a pretty strong internal document statement to send that two guys are listed terrorists or known terrorists in Canada on watch lists are growing a cannabis garden in Pictou, and they showed up and they raided us because of that initiating statement. And that was from information that was obtained from a cell phone that was stolen from me when I was arrested for possession for the purpose. The paperwork shows something kind of funny. They said it was possession for the purpose of cannabis. Well, the initiating charge was brown sugar. That's right, natural organic sugar. Suspected controlled substance was the reason why I had all my cannabis taken away from me. And I fought for 10.5 months to get back, and I've had it all returned, as well as my phone. Unfortunately, the phone being missing for the most part of Daren's trial, or his pre-trial, and his motions couldn't be made because of information on the phone. The police acted on information provided by Derek saying that we had an illegal garden in Lochbroom. Well, it was a lawful garden. They were all authorized plants. One of the members' plants that were taken, it's Allison. She's law enforcement. So the police doing what they do, didn't want to hear anything, seized the plants, somehow got an emergency destruction order, had the plants destroyed the very same day while Daren and I were locked in cells. He with no water, no running water in a cell, no food. Me laying in a cell next to him with only the toilet water working, and I was having seizures because they took my medicine away from me. They forced me to remain unmedicated at the farm while they stole our plants. They left my dog in the house, my service dog in the house alone overnight, terrified. I don't know, no food, no water for the dog. Anyway.
Tell me a bit about the raid, like how it all went down.
Well, Daren went to town to pick up some naphtha. He'd driven to Moncton and he was gone for the day, and after having heard a helicopter almost sound like it was going to crash into the roof because it was so low to the ground, flying over, I walked outside and noticed that, yes, it was what appeared to be the police. And then all of a sudden there was a bunch of police coming up the driveway, and there was a no trespassing sign on the gate, and the gate had been closed, but it had been locked. The sign still says no trespassing. Police came ripping up the driveway, placed me under arrest, held me outside all day in the sun, not allowing me into the house, access to my dog, access to my medicine, waiting for Daren to come home. And that's okay. Daren and I are ready to face the charges. We did nothing wrong. We should have been vindicated. Well, they withdrew the charges December 17th, or December 15th, 2018, that they had laid only in September, so 3 months earlier. 3 months later, after they managed to steal the rest of the documents from our home and farm in Lochbroom, and Bob Dillman, ex-law enforcement, a guy that's apparently working for the Stellarton RCMP, a guy that had testified previously that Daren had saved his life. I don't know. I believe Daren saved his life by providing him medicine and access to it, but we'll see. Either way, it's part and parcel to the story. It's really complicated. There's many parts to it. We finally established last time we were in court for Daren in Amherst that the police planted the shotgun. We had all of the gun charges except for 3 withdrawn or thrown out.
What were those guns? Tell me.
Those guns were such rusted objects. They look like fossils. They look like they'd been pulled up in a field. They had been there for 50 years. If you hadn't been told that that was a gun, you wouldn't have recognized what it was. During Daren's trial, it also came out that a firearm that wasn't covered, a Colt Navy, had no mainspring, which is kind of like a firing pin, or the trigger, not the firing pin. And they sent the gun away to Ottawa to an expert, had a hard time finding the part, had to manufacture one, then they had to manufacture ammunition. So basically they modified a non-functioning replica, turned it into a functioning firearm, tested it, and have charged Daren and are willing to testify that they basically made a zip gun out of nothing, and they're going to try to convict them with it, alongside a shotgun that they've now admitted was planted. And there was also personal property and items stolen from the farm in Lochbroom. We lost so much stuff. We lost oil. We lost almost 5 gallons of oil. I lost 8 pounds of my personal storage of medicine. We lost all of our disclosure for all the complicated court cases, the dispensary cases that we have going on in Nova Scotia, the dispensary case that we had in New Brunswick with Nova Buds. There's so many facets to this story. It's just, I don't know how to narrow it down.
No, but stick with the... They came in, they raided you.
They came in and raided us, and one of the funny things is, I guess, when we were sitting there, I told them I was going to go in the house and get some cigarettes because I didn't care that they were going to try to hold me in detention. I wasn't under arrest, and I was going in my house. So I went in my house to get some cigarettes and some medication, and the police officer followed me in, and he informed me that he was the tobacco task force coordinator, and that I had Indigenous cigarettes. Well, I didn't have Indigenous cigarettes, I had Aboriginal cigarettes. Being Aboriginal, I figured I would have a right to have Aboriginal cigarettes. So we debated it outside, and he said we'd see how it goes. And after the raid, when they stole all the plants, stole all our genetics, used Sabbat, which was the military, for enforcement against us. Funny how it's the same year that the Ministry of the Government of Nova Scotia said Sabbat wasn't used in the province. Well, there's another fella that's going to become quite famous in the story. His name is Wayne Skipper Bent, and he's the guy that stole stuff from our house. He's the guy that directed a whole bunch of strange things to happen, and I've checked into him. He keeps sloppy notes, and during our disclosure records that we got before we lost them, and I may still just have a copy, or I may have lost a copy, but there's information in there that establishes that they were offside doing what they did. And they basically human trafficked us, tortured us, and then used a bunch of collusion and fraud and other agents to obtain all of our disclosure, all of our defense materials. In fact, in one case from Lochbroom, they had the judge, the witness, Doug Shafford, the minister of defense listed as customers of ours that they said in our disclosure from Lockbroom for growing pot that they were trying to support trafficking or possession for the purpose of trafficking was our witness list and a judge's daughter. Oh, it was quite funny. I was in Superior Court and I pointed out to the judge that, hey, what I'm saying sounds far-fetched, but look, here's disclosure that says in a different case when they took our information that you're on here as being one of our customers and clients. Well, the only thing that I really want to say is that we would gladly give them oil if they asked, and what they do with it, that's up to them. But they never did, so we never gave them oil. Anyhow, Daren's in a rough spot. We had a dispensary. We had Nova Bloods. That's a chain of dispensaries. They've been under attack. We've suffered a whole lot of things since coming down here to help Daren. I've been human trafficked twice, tortured by the RCMP, voided, repeatedly denied access to the courts, and Daren and I were almost murdered this past April by a confidential informant. Again, not beyond the type of dirty tricks that Amherst may or may not be involved with. Who knows? Picto's involved. At this point in time, I've been greenlit. And for those of you that don't know what that means that one police officer tells other police officers that he's in fear for his safety or his actions are about to be exposed, so we need some help. So, I don't know. How we would try to help our friends is probably how the cops try to help their friends, except they're paid liars, and that they're allowed to do that. I don't know. They've got us in court on a bunch of lies put out forward by the police. I'm currently in a situation where I'm under charges where I can face up to 14 years in jail for having done no wrong. Daren's facing double life sentence. This is crazy. They've charged him with breaches, yet he hasn't breached. He has done nothing wrong. I can't attend the courthouse in Amherst to enter a defense, otherwise I breach my bail conditions. I only have two conditions: to show up in court when I'm told, and not to contact directly or indirectly the court at 16 Amherst in Nova Scotia, or Church Street in Amherst. Unfortunately, that's the registry for the Superior Court where I'm helping Daren. The last time I was there, they assaulted my wife. They assaulted me. I was arrested. I defended myself. I was charged with causing the disturbance. More likely assault police, but they were in excessive jurisdiction, so, you know, they call it no harm. I call it no foul. It is what it is. But I'm under bail conditions. It says I can't contact the court, so I can't even defend myself. Indirectly means that even if a lawyer was to contact the court and try to assist me, I breach my conditions. My wife was denied access to the court two days ago when I was there with Daren, and she's denied on bail conditions with no charges. I have a gin report that says that I had a charge withdrawn this past May for possession for the purpose of trafficking. I had no idea I'd even been arrested. All I know is that when I was on my way into court before they raided the farm, I had Derek Hibbert take my cannabis oil away from me. Shortly thereafter, I was having seizures on the stand. I pointed out to the judge I was having seizures. Derek, the police officer who was working for the Combined Forces Street Enforcement Unit, the RCMP,
You hear that too, right?
yeah.
Just back up a little bit. Just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was really bad. Your wife. No, okay, this guy taking you're having seizures on the
Yeah, okay. Well, so back in August 2018, while I was a witness, or I was directed to come to court to be a witness to give testimony, I guess, and I'm acting as Daren's agent or counsel, and it seems complicated that his counsel or his lawyer would testify against him, but that's what Daren wanted, so that's what happened. He put me on the stand, and I revealed that Doug Shafford was the kingpin of a little crime wave in Amherst with confidential informants and all sorts of things. They're still prosecuting Rick Simpson and trying, not Rick, but the people involved with the Simpson oil. I was on the stand testifying, and I was having seizures. The first time I had been there in April, they had seen me eat 2.5 grams of oil at the counter in front of the police. I don't know what they were expecting to happen, but I held my own in the court. Daren and I did quite well, and we set a few precedents in Canada that day as well, a few firsts. All I know is that the police knew that I had seizures from having lack of oil. They took my oil away. I had seizures on the stand. The transcripts were edited. This is before we were able to establish that the police framed Daren with a shotgun. My license, my exemption, my authorizing document for my cannabis that Daren was growing, that he was in court facing, is still taped to the fridge. You can almost see it in the picture with the shotgun they planted in the house. Too bad you couldn't see my authorization on the fridge in that picture, because they've entered that as evidence. Yeah, last time I was in court for Daren to help him out, they arrested my wife for leaving the following direction and not leaving the building fast enough. So they got her for disturbing the peace and attempt flee custody after she was told to leave the building. Well, I walked out of the building, out of the courtroom on a recess and saw her in detention and kind of lost my mind. Didn't really lose my mind. I swore a little bit to let them know I was angry. And as my disclosure says, pardon the language, I gave Moore 2 fucks, but the third one's going to cost him a day in jail. Well, it did. And we're going to now have a constitutional trial to find out whether or not I have freedom of expression in a courtroom or outside of the courtroom. We already know that you can say things in the courtroom like that, because Daren has it in his transcripts. He's done so. Well, I'm not sure if it's going to be allowed or not, but I was arrested for disturbing the peace by swearing. So only 2 fucks were given. I'm in court fighting this. I can't defend it. I cannot defend myself. I'm not allowed to contact the courthouse directly or indirectly.
And you guys have tried to file charges against the police?
Oh, we've filed charges repeatedly, asked for investigations. We have file numbers and occurrence reports, all sorts of things. It's thin blue line right across. We've been human trafficked, we've been denied access, and this time they're not going to put us in jail. They took the farm away from us, so up in Lockbroom, by trickery and corruption and having Crown agents perform fraudulent acts, we went up there to verify our property at the farm, and we had quite a little scenario with a number of police officers, and we've got some neat footage of that. Maybe it can be put in somewhere, but yeah, this story is nowhere near over.
Just that. The wind's hitting the mic. The wind shifted a bit. It's okay, though. It's okay.
So this is kind of an introduction thing, just to lay the area of where we can go and what's going to be going on, but it's really complicated. If this was Hollywood, this would be a multi-million-dollar blockbuster hit movie, but this is real life. I went with Daren to Montreal to a company called Blunt, and they were willing to do a mini docu-series on these events. And they spoke to Daren and I about it. Their legal counsel spoke to Daren and I about it, and their opinion was, what country did this happen? You should move to Canada. And when Daren told them it was Nova Scotia and Amherst, they didn't believe it. He produced thousands of pages of documents to support this, and they dropped the story. They basically walked away and kicked us out, dropped the story, and abandoned us in Quebec. Daren had to fend to get himself back home for court. I was denied access to getting out here with my service dog. And yeah, that's twice now I've had seizures without having my service dog. Maybe next time I'm going to bring my dog with me to court, and we'll see how that goes.
The long and short of it is, they want to put you guys in jail for curing cancer and even under license and exemption.
Under exemptions.
So why should there ever be a charge in the very first place?
There should never be a charge. There should never have been a charge in the first place.
Like in other words, you guys played you guys played it the way they want. They told you had to do it to make it all on the up and up, and it didn't matter. They still came in.
I am going to take responsibility for this. I've been after Daren to comply and submit and follow the rules. It took me 10 years to convince him to get a license. Since Daren personally got a license for cannabis under ACMPR, he's been arrested and voided 11 times. It's ridiculous. And I feel bad for that. I'm not going to abandon him. And he's well confident that he's not going to stop doing what he's doing, and I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. But things have gotten to the point now where my current charges that I'm facing of struggling to get into the courts to help Daren and maintain the ability to have truth brought out there and exposing what's going on to cover and bury the Phoenixtears story and what they're doing to Daren. This is all about money. The government offerings are ineffective, unsafe, and overpriced. How many people?
Why are they unsafe?
Pardon me?
Why are they unsafe?
Unsafe because of the manner they're processed, the way they're marketed. They're not following the protocol. And the protocol, there could be dozens of them, but there's only one that works. It's Phoenixtears. And Rick has said over time, ISO does work. Well, it may work, but naphtha is the way to go. It's the strongest, best full spectrum oil maker. It's easily accessible, unless you're in the Maritimes, then you can't get it anywhere. It has to be imported from from Ontario. Naphtha gives a full spectrum, and that's what we need. It's Daren's oil tests in at over 94%. Well, that's pretty good. We need the euphoria. We need the healing.
94% what?
94% THC. So in 1 gram of oil, Daren's got 940 milligrams of THC. While 1 full bottle of the LP oil is, I believe, the equivalent to 3.5 grams of raw product. Well, for 1 gram of Daren's oil, we use 30 grams a pot, roughly. And that's indica. Well, the government stuff, it's sativa and sativa blends. It's horrific. Sativa may cure that stuff. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But indica works. It's what works, and the number of the best quality parts of the indica plants, the buds, multiple sections of the buds, little raspberry sides of it. To follow the recipe and the protocol exactly, it would take almost 10 pounds of buds, so you can get just the little tiny cola tips to make your 1 pound of bud to rinse. The most potent, most powerful part of the plant is what you want for your first wash. All the other stuff, the rest of the buds, that's done through a secondary process, your second rinse. And then you combine the two together. That's how you get the best spectrum. And when you're reducing it, never forget to add the water. The water is very key. And oh, please, if anybody wants to try this, do not ever do this in the house. Do not refine it indoors. Do it outside. It has to be done outside for safety reasons. It's simple, and no one gets harmed if it's done outside. And everybody would have access to it. The primary reason why we're under attack, well, street prices, say $900 in BC, let's call it $1,400 for a pound. In the Maritimes, let's call it $1,100 in Ontario, plus a little bit of naphtha. So for about $1,300 to $1,500 in just about anywhere in Canada, you could make yourself 50, 60 grams of oil, Rick Simpson style oil, Phoenixtears, and effectively treat whatever it is that's ailing you. Well, that means no more pharmaceuticals, no more diabetes issues. It stimulates the economy a little bit because, yeah, you got to go buy new clothes if you ate a lot of corn syrup and bad food beforehand, but the oil will fix that. Reverses chemo sometimes if it's caught early enough. Remember, if you do chemo and the oil has to fix the damage from the chemo before it can think about attacking the cancer. So please, folks, if you're going to do this, commit to it. Do just the oil. Always just the oil.
And of course, it's not medical advice.
It's just not medical advice. It's just not even common sense. Uncommon sense, I'm going to call it. Because if it was common sense, everybody would know. The system out there about the money and the doctors pushing the stuff, everybody wants to have this. Imagine a marketing program that says, hey, we're a licensed producer, we're government approved, we've got a great product. No one's ever treated their cancer with this. You might be the first. It's $100 a bottle. It'll last you 3 or 4 days. Well, hey, it's sativa oil. It's not made with indica. And comparatively speaking, it's about 1/20th of the power of your homemade oil. Even oil you make with alcohol and do that extraction. And I'm talking moonshine, Everclear, ethanol extraction. That's great for tinctures, for cancers. Really, truly, the most effective thing is naphtha. If you can't get naphtha, ether works pretty good, but that might put you on a watch list or two. Yeah, it's really complicated. Again, Daren and I's lives were put at risk repeatedly. The farm in Lochbroom was listed on the Global Interdiction Incident Map. For those of you that don't know, that's the world tracking of law enforcement events worldwide. So Daren and I, well actually not us, the farm in Lochbroom, 1399, Lochbroom Loop, Nova Scotia, where Bob Dillman is currently residing. And rightfully or wrongfully, he got possession of our farm, Daren's farm, and extorted Daren and I for all our legal documents, our original medical papers, our defense documents, all the growing equipment, thousands of dollars of growing equipment, all of it, everything, stolen, extorted with the help of the Stellarton RCMP. And now they have the audacity to charge us again and to add 2 breaches for Daren. So Daren's now probably looking at a combined total of 40-some years in jail. And how many corrupt police forces and thin blue line incidents can there be? They tried to kill him before. They tried again in Moncton. This time they tried to kill me. Well, we're still here. I've been greenlit by the Moncton RCMP. Luke Basque, hey, that prick. Hey, that guy. It's another story. But he told...
When you're done, I'm going to tell you something. I think I know that guy.
This guy told me there was nothing he could do to help us when my wife called for help. And we had trapped a minor child that had broken into her house that was known to the police. Possibly another informant. Who knows? Doesn't matter. He assaulted my wife, he assaulted me, denied me that I was media, tried to slap the phone out of my hands. And then we had an incident where we needed assistance a couple of days later, and they came to the shop to Mary Jane's Smoke Easy, the lounge that Daren and I operate in Moncton. We had shut down Nova Bud's dispensary and all of the dispensaries that we'd operated in the Maritimes quietly for years, trying to help people, and turned it into a lounge. Well, this guy was sitting in a hospital and said, hey, there's only 10 of us on shift, looking at his other police buddies, and says, 6 of us are here right now in case that guy shows up. Well, I'm that guy. And Luke said that I'm trying to take his badge. I have no interest in his badge. None. He's done that himself. He offered up his badge when he exceeded jurisdiction, assaulted me, and assaulted my wife. The common law right to protect my wife and myself from trespass exceeds his ability to be stupid in uniform. It doesn't matter. They've tried to kill us. They've denied us access to the courts. They've barred us from the courts, barred me from the courts. My wife has been physically ejected from the courthouse in Moncton trying to go in to file a complaint. I even have current paperwork here in my hands that I brought with me with incidents that reference things that happened nearly a year ago. And my police disclosure from the matter where I was charged at the beginning of June this past year, so June 2019, at the beginning, I was charged with disturbing the peace at a courthouse and possession of psilocybin mushrooms